2 days of building and it broke in 30 seconds. So Kyosho recently sent me this Mini-Z 4x4. It's a Jeep Wrangler Rubicon, but it's the USA Interco version, and that means it has Interco Super Swamper tires on it, even an Interco Super Swamper spare. They've got a light bar on top, snorkel, roof rack, some side ladders, and that's really the difference between that and this Jeep Wrangler Rubicon here that I've already reviewed on the channel. And so instead of just doing something about the body accessories, I said, you know what, let's get all of the option parts in and we'll build up a project. So here's what we have. I've got the belt crawler tracks for it. These look very cool, but looks like a lot of assembly work is in my future. Also got the oil-filled shock set. This should help with the suspension so it's not so wobbly and bouncy and stuff. And then I got some of the brass parts. So here is the front brass hub. Looks like there's all the hardware and an Allen wrench in there. And then the rear axle caps, these are brass as well. While I'm at it, I went ahead and got some FuriTech stuff. FuriTech makes some awesome electronics and they actually make some cool frames as well. I got the aluminum version for the Kyosho, and then I got the brushless system. It's the speed controller and motor combo, and to control it, I've got their Avatar radio system. All right, I'm not gonna go through the full buildup of it. I'm just gonna highlight everything. So I started off by disassembling the stock truck. I wanted to get the transmission out, the axles, the drive shafts, the links, and hardware and bumpers. And then I moved on to assembling the front axle. So there's a number of changes I made here. Obviously, I swapped out the plastic housing for the die-cast metal housing, which is absolutely awesome. Very cool upgrade for this. And then I went and installed the brass outer knuckles, and that was fairly easy. Just make sure that when you're assembling this, you pay attention to any hardware you have to transfer over, and just the way the assembly goes, you have to pinch the knuckle between the two halves of the cast housing. The rear axle is stock, with the exception of the brass weights on the outside. They just screw on, actually. Pretty interesting how that goes. Really simple to swap those out, actually. And then I moved on to the chassis. So this is the FuriTech chassis that they offer for the Mini-Z 4x4. And this one was a bit of a challenge because they didn't give you instructions, so I kind of just looked at pictures and started putting it together, and some of the hardware just didn't match up. It didn't fit right. These screws down here on the side plates, the short ones, really didn't screw in. Actually, I think the hole wasn't even drilled properly, so I'm not sure if I could actually recommend this chassis, just because it was a pain to put together. I wound up using the tapping screws from the stock chassis to hold this together because there weren't any threads in some of the holes. So that was kind of a bummer. But once it's together, it does look pretty cool. It offers you a lot of spots to go and mount optional electronics. So there is that. So if you could look past the hardware issue with it, kind of just cobble together the hardware yourself, it might work for you. The other thing was finding a steering servo. It requires a micro servo, I believe. Very small servo, either way. I wound up putting in a high-tech HS40 servo, and FuriTech has a couple of servo options, I believe, for it as well, but this is what I had on hand. And then moved on to the shocks. So these are Kyosho shocks, really nicely machined. It allows you to put oil in them, and they give you oil in the kit as well. But the only problem I have is one of them keeps leaking on me, and then just mounting them up. So FuriTech gives you some hardware. They give you an aluminum spacer, and actually went and put these O-rings on that came with the shocks, but had to add an additional O-ring so this shock wouldn't slide in and out, and just use the retaining nut on the outside. Use some thread lock on those. So, you know, some of the spots you're gonna have to use some thread lock just so it doesn't back out. So I got the suspension together, looks good, and moved on to the electronics. Took me a while to figure out how to get the FuriTech motor in there. Looked at some pictures online, saw that the wires are coming out of the side of this housing adapter. Just couldn't get it to work, so I wound up cutting up the top bracket here, the stock bracket, to allow the wires to poke up through the top, and so they exit the larger opening. Had to go and take this in and out a bunch of times because the pinion gear mesh wasn't right, so it's got to take you time to get this thing together. It's more on the custom side than just the drop in and play type method that a lot of people do like. I don't mind tinkering with things, but just want to let you guys know it takes a while to do that. Wound up up with the FuryTech Avatar radio system, which is pretty cool once you get used to figuring out all the menus and screens and stuff, but really small receiver you could drop right in with a standard 3-wire servo. And then I went with the FuryTech speed controller that came with the brushless system. Wires up pretty easily. Everything is plug in and play with the exception of the battery pack. I had to go and use this axial battery. Actually, it's a Spectrum battery pack from one of my SCX24s and stand up the pack in the back just because of the type of connector that they give you. I might swap that out later on down the road and put a smaller pack in that will settle in this rear section here. Just wound up taping the battery in. But that's where we're at. It took quite a few hours to get to this point for such a small car. But during the build, I found out that these brass weights here don't work with the tracks. So I threw one of the tracks together here, and those brass weights don't fit in the adapter plate that allows you to bolt up this track system. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go out and just drive this so you can see how it does on rubber tires with all the changes made to it. Then I'll hit the workshop again to rip off these brass pieces and throw on the tracks for a little bit of snow fun. So for the shakedown run on my Mini-Z 4x4, I went over to the Hobby Center in Newtown, Connecticut. They have an indoor crawler course there, more geared towards, I would say, 18 scale, but the 24 scales could definitely get through it, and I had a really good time with this project. First up, when I walked through the door, the rig got a lot of attention, just those red parts peeking out from under the fender wells. Everybody had to check out the rig, and it didn't disappoint when I went over to drive it. First up, it is a little bit noisy. I mean, that's the first thing you're gonna notice in the video here is the body really amplifies the sound of the drivetrain on it, and the drivetrain is actually pretty quiet once you take the body off. So, sound aside, it's all about the performance of this rig, and I instantly noticed that the shocks on this are way better than the original just spring dampers. They're not even damped, so the oil definitely helps out. The only thing is one of the shocks is leaking. It's something I have to track down and figure out if I could fix it or not. But either way, just having some sort of oil in the shocks is definitely a great upgrade. The power system, this FuryTech system, is awesome. I absolutely love the way it works. Just nice, smooth throttle feel now, very controllable. And then the high-tech servo did great for the steering. Did have to go and make some adjustments to the radio system just to get full steering. It set your endpoint adjustments, definitely want to do that. But overall, the rig just works really well with the modifications that I made. The biggest help beyond just the electronic swap was the addition of weight to it. Those brass weights really help out. Smaller diameter tires helps keep the rig a little bit lower as well. So it really just tackled a lot of the rough stuff. There's a step section in the course where the hobby shop manager was telling me it hangs up a lot of people, and I was able to get the rig up through it without an issue, just picking the right lines, and then with the modifications, the truck just works really well. Back at the bench here, time to build up these belt crawler tracks, and there's a lot of work to get these little things together. A lot of parts to cut off the parts trees, and I'm just going to build it up without the extra little tread pieces that help with traction. They give you these pins and these little plates that you could snap into place, but I'm just going to run the tracks as is. Here's the tracks bolted up to the rig. I think that looks pretty sick. I hope they perform as good as they look. Let's head outside and see how they do. So this isn't supposed to do this. This is supposed to stay stable right here, and the problem is one of the guide pins broke. It kind of stabilizes the track down there. And the thing is I didn't even run this thing for a minute. It was really like 30, 40 seconds maybe at the most. I was just testing it out so I could do some action for you guys with these tracks. So I can't even tell you about them other than I don't like them because it broke so easily. I think what happened was a stick got caught in there, and actually the others look like they're flexing a little bit too. I don't know, but the thing is, I can't get that part. They don't just sell that piece. You have to buy a whole nother track set in order to get that guide pin or whatever it's called. So I guess the best way to do it actually is to go and 3D print one myself, but I'm gonna have to go design it. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just totally going to skip that. We're just going to call that a fail on this. And I would suggest if you really do want tracks for your Mini-Z, that when you do assemble them and go to run them, you run them on like a smoother surface. It's something where no sticks are going to get caught in it, or anything's going to get caught in it, really. So maybe some packed down sand and packed down dirt, or just on carpet or whatever. That'll be fine for that. But then when I came here in the workshop, I went to take the body off, and one of the side plates for the body mounts ripped out of the chassis. The screw holes just stripped right out. So I'm just not having some good luck with this thing. But, you know, I do see an upside to it. There are plenty of parts on here that I really do like, and I'm just going to go and turn it back into a rubber tire truck. And I'm going to find some longer screws so I could go and secure these body mounts a little bit better to this chassis. I'm going to keep with this chassis. I really like the shocks on this. Those are an absolute must. Totally get those if you're looking to upgrade your Mini-Z 4x4. Also like the brushless system. That is absolutely awesome from Fury Tech. Nice, small, compact. Takes a little bit of work to get in there, but it makes the truck just so much more drivable. Like the front cast housing, that's pretty cool, but what really works are these brass weights. Throw them on all four corners. I'm gonna throw those rubber tires back on, and I think this truck is gonna be dialed in. I'd kind of say stick with the stock chassis maybe, you know, if you don't want to go through all the extra hassle of figuring out the hardware with this Fury Tech chassis. The only thing is you're going to have to find some sort of servo mount for the stock chassis, and I saw a couple people 3D printing some, so you might have to go that route. But there's some good elements to this project build, and there was definitely some bad elements that, you know, I'm kind of steering you guys away from the tracks, and, you know, the chassis is up in the air. So there is my project build, guys. I wanted to get this out in the snow, but that's just not going to happen. It's going to go back onto the crawler course where I just had so much fun with it. If you want to find some of these parts yourself, I'll have links for them in the video description below. We'll see you guys back soon for some more RC Driver videos.